longtime resident of Vallejo and retired accountant and CPA. To his right is Jim Libyan, also a Vallejo resident and attorney working in the Bay Area with local governments. We've got Jim's going to be making some introductory remarks, and then there'll be some time for question and answer. And if you need to do some one-on-one interviews afterwards, there'll be a chance for that as well. We've also got some collateral information here for you today with some specific language that addresses the charter language that Jim will be discussing in just a moment, as well as our news release. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
Thank you all for coming. We're here today to announce the beginning of something that may prove to be more important than anything that has happened here in decades. A group of citizens have come together to put an initiative on the November ballot. It's an initiative that will return our resources back to local control, restore fiscal accountability to City Hall, and pave the way for our city to recognize the full potential of its future. It may sound like a tall order we're pursuing, but you'll be surprised at how simple that fix is. What we're doing is we're putting a simple initiative on the November ballot to remove binding arbitration from the Vallejo City Charter. Binding arbitration is an obsolete form of dispute resolution that ships the problem off to a third-party arbitrator. Anytime a public employee union doesn't want to negotiate with the city over contract provisions, they can demand binding arbitration. Since these third-party arbitrators have no investment in or ties to the city and no stake in the resolution they impose, the mere existence of binding arbitration is contrary to the interests of the city and the citizens. And here's the kicker. Once the arbitrators rendered a decision, there's no appeal. The decision is set in stone. That's it. Case closed. Binding arbitration permanently removes local government and elected officials from the process of dispute resolution. And when you remove our representatives from the process of making the big decisions that impact the community, you've effectively removed all of us from that process too, and that's wrong. With binding arbitration embedded in the city charter, the city has slipped into a financial mess that will affect us all. Look what just happened in this building here last night. The deep hole just got a little deeper, and there's no resolve on that council to make the tough decisions required to fix the problems. Well, if they won't step up to the plate and do what should be done, we will. Binding arbitration has been ruled unconstitutional by the California Supreme Court, and the California League of Cities says it should go. Only 22 of nearly 500 cities in California still have binding arbitration. Someone tried to slip it into a city charter down in Santa Clara County a few years ago, and the voters rejected it overwhelmingly. It's time for it to go in Vallejo. I moved here from Marin County with my wife 7 years ago because I believed the city had a great future. I still believe that. We have 3 colleges here in Vallejo, a magnificent waterfront with enormous potential, a great ferry system linking us to San Francisco, and the future revitalization of our downtown and Mare Island. In the next several weeks, our supporters will be at the farmers market, in front of supermarkets, at the ferry terminal, and other public places gathering the 7,000 plus signatures that we need to put this initiative on the ballot in November. It's going to take a lot of work, and we'd be glad to have more help. We've asked our city council innumerable times to do something about the structural problem that's sinking Vallejo. And again last night, they sat on their hands. When representative government fails the citizens it's supposed to serve, then it's the duty of those same citizens to exercise their civic responsibilities. That's what we're doing here today, and that's what this initiative is all about. This is our opportunity to change the city's course and future. It's our chance to make local government accountable to us, and it's our turn to help give Vallejo the future we all want and deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Do you have any questions for Jim or JD? Sarah?
Well, do you think binding arbitration was at the heart of the reason why the council was unable to come to a decision last night? With that lurking in the background, is that what you're saying?
I don't think that binding arbitration had to kept them from making their decision last night. I think they just interested and want to make a decision, and they don't want to face the realities of what we're dealing with. And one of those realities is binding arbitration.
Well, you did say that we witnessed what happened last night in your remarks. So explain how binding arbitration contributed to what occurred last night.
Well, I don't know that binding arbitration contributed to last night. What I witnessed last night was an inability to do anything. They just wouldn't do anything. In face of all the information they have, all the time that they've had to do what they need to do, we're still in the same position that we were in. And this whole thing with binding arbitration is a group of citizens saying that if the government won't move and take the steps that they need to make this city better, then we're going to start that process ourselves, and we're going to do it with binding arbitration.
Jim, Mark Garman, Vallejo Independent Bulletin. If binding arbitration is off the charter, what options does it leave for the city and for the unions to use in the negotiating process?
If binding arbitration is off the charter, there's still an option of mediation. It would be a unique thing for them to talk to each other and to resolve these things without going to some expensive, complicated process. But there's no elimination of mediation, and in fact, the Myers-Milius-Brown Act would obligate the city to participate in mediation.
Anyone else? Okay.
Do you think that binding arbitration favors unions historically?
Yes, I do think that binding arbitration favors the unions, and that's been the experience that Vallejo has had. In fact, I can't think of one time that the city has ever won going to binding arbitration. The union seems to win in every case. It becomes enormously expensive, enormously complicated, and enormously time-consuming.
I get one more, Jim. If under binding arbitration, if a dispute goes into binding arbitration and the city loses, what options does the city have to redress that decision?
There are no options. Binding arbitration is final. So once the decision is made, the city is stuck with that decision.
What is your deadline for collecting signatures to get it on the November ballot?
We're going to have all of our signatures done by June 2nd.
June 2nd?
Supposing that this proposal goes to the voters and it wins, so it gets taken off the city charter, what good is that going to do in case the city council already decided to go bankrupt? Could it be retroactive? No, right?
If the city goes bankrupt, there's nothing that says that the city will be absolved of their responsibilities under the contract in the bankruptcy process. That may happen, but it may not happen. But at least for the future and looking down the road and trying to build a future for this city, we're going to be in the position of saying there will be no more binding arbitration in any contracts beyond that date.
So that's not really a measure taken to give a solution to this current crisis, but looking towards the future, maybe.
That's correct, looking towards the future.
All right, great. Well, thank you all for coming. I think that wraps up the press conference.